So now let's talk about the problem of the day. During this time, we'll think together about how to represent and solve this problem and what it teaches us about math. When I ask you questions, please make sure to answer out loud, just like you would in school. So some of you might have represented like this. I definitely had kids last year that did. They put a GW for George Washington stamps and an SH for the superhero stamps. Then they put a group of 9 for GW and 3 groups of 9 for the superhero stamps. Then they put a variable for the unknown number of superhero stamps. So my question is, how does this tape diagram represent the story? Say it out loud. Right, it shows one group of 9 for the George Washington stamps and 3 groups of 9 for the superhero stamps. But why would we show one group of 9 for the George Washington stamps, but 3 groups of 9 for the superhero stamps? Say it out loud. Right. In the story, it tells us that Omar has 9 George Washington stamps and 3 times as many superhero stamps as he has George Washington stamps. So how would we solve to find the number of superhero stamps? Say it out loud. Sure. We would take the 9 George Washington stamps and multiply it by 3 because there are 3 times as many superhero as GW, and that would give us our number of superhero stamps. So when we solve, are we going to end up with more George Washington stamps or more superhero stamps? How do you know? Say it out loud. Yeah, more superhero stamps. Because the problem said he has 3 times as many superhero stamps as the other kind. So that means there are 3 times more superhero stamps than George Washington stamps. So how many superhero stamps are there? Say it out loud. Yeah, there are 27. 9 times 3 is 27 superhero stamps. That's right. So this type of problem is called a multiplicative comparison problem. How is it different from other comparison problems that you've solved in other grades? Say it out loud. Yeah, here we have to multiply. We were comparing times greater instead of just greater or less. So a multiplicative compare problem compares 2 amounts using language like times greater or more, or times less or fewer. And it can be solved with either multiplication or division. These problems can be tricky, and we're definitely going to need to try our best with them. Part of trying our best is using strategies that help us to be successful. I talked with some kids last year about what they thought about when they were tackling problems like this, and I want to share some of their thinking questions with you before we dig into the try one more. So after we've read the problem and realized we are comparing, they said they could ask ourselves first, what is being compared? Read this with me. Go. What is being compared? Okay, so what is being compared in this problem? Say it out loud. Yeah. George Washington stamps versus superhero stamps. That's right. Okay. Then they said we could ask ourselves, which thing has the greater amount? Read this with me. Go. Which thing has the greater amount? Let's reread the sentence from the story problem that tells us the comparison. Get ready? Go. He has 3 times as many superhero stamps as he does George Washington stamps. So, which has the greater amount? Superhero stamps or George Washington stamps? Say it out loud. Yeah, superhero stamps. And how do we know? Say it out loud. Yeah, it says in the story he has 3 times as many superhero stamps as George Washington stamps. That means there are 3 times more or 3 times greater. So I'm going to jot greater right under superhero. Okay, great. Last, they said we could ask ourselves, what amount are we given? Read this with me. Go. Which amount am I given? Okay, so what amount are we given in this problem? Say it out loud. Yeah, George Washington stamps. We know that is 9, and we don't know how many superhero stamps. Great work with those thinking questions. I think they're really going to help us try our best on our work today. So once we had them answered here in these jots, then we're ready to represent and solve. We already know that we solve by multiplying 9 times 3. Remind me, why do we choose to multiply or make more groups? Say it out loud. Right. There were more superhero stamps than there were, and we were given the George Washington stamps. So we had to make the 9 George Washington stamps 3 times bigger to find the number of superhero stamps. Interesting. So we multiplied because the amount that was unknown was greater than the amount we were given. I'm going to put that right here in the bottom of our visual anchor. Right? We can multiply to find the larger or greater amount. And let's keep that in mind today and over the next few days. Go ahead and click the arrow to move to the next slide.